We had a very interesting show a couple nights ago. A couple of clips of the show went farther and wider than I think any of us expected to. I saw quotes used from our show on The Athletic. I saw it on Outkick, Awful Announcing. I saw it on Yardbark or a bunch of other sites. Pardon My Take talked about it today or yesterday or something. And I think that there is a bit of, I'm not going to say things are taken out of context. People can go back and watch things and listen to things however they want. It's available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Google Podcasts. And it's on YouTube, and it's on Facebook, and it's on X. But you came on the show after the Flyers executed a trade for Jamie Drysdale, who is going to be on the ice tonight, wearing number 9 on Pride Night. And you talked about Kevin Hayes and about Kevin Hayes' potential influence on Cutter Gauthier and how he may or may not have soured on this team. Now, when we talked about it in the moment, we walked away from it, and we came back to it and took a look at the people that had talked to you and had sent things your way, and Bundy and I, and you guys went on Crossing Broadcast today to talk about this. I think people took it as you saying that Kevin Hayes was responsible 100%, that he held Cutter Gauthier's hand, kind of like a few years ago the Dallas Mavericks did that with DeAndre Jordan. They held him almost hostage in his house when free agency hit. So I want to give you the floor here first to address if that's what your intention was. And like I mentioned, you were on another show this morning and you kind of broke this down, but I want to give you the floor before we get into this game against the Montreal Canadiens.
And that's fine. And so, one of the questions that they asked me on Crossing Broadcast today was, do I stand behind my report? I'm going to look you right in the eyes in the camera and tell everybody I do stand behind my report. Nothing about my report changes. Nothing I would not say anything is different about anything that I wrote or anything that I have said. What I will say is that exactly what you just brought up, Russ, and I talked about this earlier, is that the idea is that I think it was taken to the point where it was like I said that Kevin Hayes was, holding Cutter Gauthier's hand, walking him through this entire process with this devious little sneer and rubbing his hands together. You're not going to sign with the Flyers. That's not at all what the suggestion was. In fact, and why he probably reacted the way he did is because he didn't think of it as being some kind of intentional guidance on his part to Cutter Gauthier. There are multiple things that came into play here. That was the first one that I had heard. Obviously, there were others that came out over the course of the 24 hours after the trade happened. That included, some kind of salary situation. That included Cutter wanting to be on the Flyers roster.
Being upset that he wasn't guaranteed a spot on the team.
Guaranteed it. So a number of things that came into play there, and all true. But the reality of the situation is when Cutter Gauthier was drafted, one of the first people that the Flyers asked to talk to Cutter Gauthier was Kevin Hayes. He's a veteran in the NHL. He was a leader on the team as one of the alternate captains the season before. Went to Boston College, so there was an obvious connection that you're going to want to have there. And so he kind of befriended the Flyers draft pick. They took him golfing. Gauthier said several times afterwards, hey, he's awesome. He's kind of like a mentor to me.
Nice to have him in the contacts, be able to call on him whenever I want, all that.
And so, of course, it was all wine and roses at that point.
Yes.
Over the course of the year, things kind of change. And that they change because Kevin Hayes and John Tortorella don't really see eye to eye. I defended Kevin Hayes, if you recall, several times.
Yes.
I did. In his dealings with Tortorella, I thought that Tortorella was a little unfair to him.
Hayes did take the high road a few times.
He did.
He didn't go on the public. I mean, he could have made things very ugly. He was publicly humiliated to some extent by John Tortorella.
Yes.
And I think that because I don't want to spend the entire pregame on this. But
go ahead.
Everybody is human. And Kevin Hayes is human.
Yeah.
And when you work for a boss, and that boss doesn't treat you with as much respect as you think you deserve, and you talk to people who either work with you or who are affiliated with you, chances are at some point you're going to blow off some steam. You're going to say some things.
I mean, guys, and this is something that we talked about with Bundy on Crossing Brook, and I would tell everybody who's watching, after the game tonight, go to the Crossing Broad YouTube page. Check out that interview Bundy and I did with Crossing Broadcast, because Bundy had some great stuff to say in there as well. But Bundy, confirms it that, guys talk all the time. In the league, if you're coming to a new city or you're about to play for a coach or something, guys will reach out to other players and be like, hey, what's it like playing for that guy? What's it like playing there? What's it like living there? Is it good for families if they have kids or whatever the case might be? All those conversations, they all happen.
Let's not forget Torrey Krug in the offseason.
Yeah.
The trade that almost materialized but then didn't. There were questions about, what were the influences that led to Torrey Krug ultimately not wanting to waive his no movement clause to come here. There were a bunch of things, and that's fine, and that's how this thing works.
Yeah, so that's really what you're saying. And so when I say his fingerprints were all over this, well, they were, because he was communicating with the kid up until the last time that Cutter Gauthier spoke to the Flyers, which was May,
after he had been publicly humiliated by the coach.
That's right. So when it comes out in January of 24, and Kevin Hayes is stunned to hear his name mentioned. Yeah. Of course he's going to say, I wasn't talking to the kid. What are you guys talking about? Yeah. What kind of stupid report is that? Well, of course he wasn't talking to him now, but did he talk to him back then? Yes. That's the thing. And so that, and everybody made it out to be such a big deal, and it's not really that big of a deal.
Well, you can also have the argument that things are kind of tangential, that if you roll in the same circles, even if you don't directly say to the person hey, I didn't like playing for this coach, or I think the organization didn't back me up the way they should have, that's all it's all gonna trickle. These players talk. Bundy did a really good job, I think, explaining that on Crossing Broadcast earlier today. I'd encourage people to go check it out. And as a former player, to express when he played for Hitchcock, and we'll put those comments, maybe we'll put them on the YouTube channel, but about when he played for Hitchcock, he did not like playing for Ken Hitchcock. There were times that if you had asked him for his honest opinion, he said he wouldn't have been able to give a glowing review of the coach, right?
Right.
It happens. All of this, right. I think a lot of this, it went and it kind of boomed and it boomed and it boomed. And I will say that I think that the Spit and Chicklets guys, who we know are part of, they're pals with Kevin Hayes. They went and they kind of cherry-picked a little bit. They used their platform. They did their thing. You didn't back down. We didn't back down. Crossing Broad, in their coverage of it, didn't back down. I'm still waiting for them to send you the link after they offered it up. I'm still waiting for them to send the link and have you on to talk about this. But maybe they will. Maybe they won't. But I think that's about where we need to go. And
the one other thing, there's
one thing I want to address with it really quick.
Oh, no, but I know where you're going to go. But okay, I just want real fast, and then I'll let you do that. What you're going to say is, and Bundy and I talked about this as well, but I want you to say it too, since you were here as well. So, we find out all at the same time that this is happening the other night. Okay, I got a text message and we shared it. And then, I start getting messages to say, look into the Hayes thing. And I don't want to give out because I always will protect my sources, right? I never will say who the sources are. But as soon as one of them came through, while we were sitting here, the three of us were sitting here, and both you and
during the first period,
and you and Bundy got to see it.
Yep.
It's legit, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So that's all I just want to say. It's not
so
the notion that I would make anything up.
And there's one other thing.
Is kind of silly.
When you presented it as someone in the organization has intimated this. You didn't say, I, Anthony SanFilippo, know beyond a reasonable doubt.
Correct.
I have the smoking gun. I have the text. I have the phone call. You said someone in the organization. And again, some people, some of these other platforms, they kind of ran with it as something a little bit different. Whatever, it happens. Now, I will say, there's one thing that we haven't addressed that I've seen some people tweet weird stuff at us. I've seen people send very strange messages on the Facebook page and on Instagram. If you're one of the people who allegedly sent a death threat or a mocking message to Kevin Hayes about the untimely passing of his brother, which was horrible and happened while Kevin Hayes was a member of this team, there is something fundamentally wrong with you. And if you get pleasure or enjoyment out of doing something like that,
correct,
that is a you problem. And under no circumstances did we encourage anyone, one, to reach out, to tweet at, to, go after the guy on Instagram about,
ridiculous,
about having contact with Cutter Gauthier. We did not do that. We did not encourage that. And furthermore, anybody who is messed up enough to send a death threat or to send something that is in any way, shape, or form the kind of things that Kevin Hayes alleged people were doing on social media, that's reprehensible.
It is.
We don't condone that. And I think the reason we didn't really address it is because the people who know us and who know this show and have followed it for years and know that there's integrity here, otherwise we wouldn't be doing this show here.
Right.
They didn't have any issues or qualms. There were some odd people who have since reached out with like 3 followers with like a random profile picture. And I mean, you can continue to send those messages, I guess, but I will tell you that like it doesn't affect us. I will tell you that
terrible.
again, the people who do that kind of thing, it doesn't just happen with sports. It happens across all kinds of entertainment. You know me, I'm the big pro wrestling guy, and those people, those journalists, those writers, they get death threats all the time. Not trying to marginalize, just saying there are a lot of messed up people who misuse and I think abuse the access they have to professional athletes, to writers, to everybody.
Yep.
And they use it in a negative way. And again, we don't condone that. We don't agree with the use. And I just wanted to make sure that we clarified that.
Yep.
Not that we had to, but just for fun. Now,
For sure. And one last thing that I have on this, and then we can move on. I know a lot of people questioned. There was a story that was written in The Athletic by my good friend Jeremy Rutherford, who's a fantastic journalist. He reached out to me. We had a good 20-minute conversation.
He writes about the Blues.
He writes about the Blues, covers the
Context.
Blues, and he had to write his editors asked him to write that story, and there was a no comment for me in there. And there's 2 reasons that there's a no comment for me in that story. One, I'm a writer. I'm a journalist. I'm not the story. The story was about Cutter Gauthier. The story he was writing was about Kevin Hayes. Yes, it was from my report, but I am not the story, so therefore I do not get quoted. Secondly, he's going to put 1 sentence in from me.
Yep.
And I don't think that does justice as far as an explanation or a conversation. I will always come on this show and be open and honest with people. If you want me on your show to talk about it, I did radio on WIP yesterday. I did Crossing Broadcast. I'm going on radio in Winnipeg. If anybody else wants me to go on, I'm happy to go on and discuss it. At least it gives me the platform to talk about it at length,
and not have it distilled down to 1 sentence.
1 sentence at the bottom of a story,
which is not ideal.
Which is why I gave a no comment.
Yep. All right. So now that we've addressed that, hopefully that's sufficed. Hopefully, if there's anybody who had questions out there, that will handle it. By all means, if you have a question, a comment, a concern, you want to tell Ant that he's one of the things that he was called by Kevin Hayes. By all means, we are up here outside the Snow The Goalie Sportsbook. You take the elevator at section 121 or 221. Come have a chat with Ant. I had nothing to do with any of this. I'm a great person, and everybody knows that. I'm an absolute delight and a joy to have on the show. All right.